Mike Cardano with the Roto Experts and the Fantasy Sports Network here with you as NFL training camp is heating up and your fantasy football draft is fast approaching. And we've got so many questions coming in from viewers that I just can't keep up. But we're here to serve, and I've got Mike Clay from Pro Football Focus with us on the line to help work through some of your questions and concerns and to do some of the heavy lifting. Mike, thanks for taking some time out of your busy day today.
Hey, anytime. It sure is a busy time. The Hall of Fame game just right around the corner. It's really exciting after spending the whole off season looking at the tape and the numbers to get some new data to work with here.
All right, let's get right to it. I'm going to read off some players that we're getting questions from our viewers. I'm going to give you their positional ADP and their overall ADP. And you tell me if you think they're going to underperform, meet expectations, or outperform. You ready? We'll start with some tight ends. Let's go with Ladarius Green, who's got a positional ADP of 16 and an overall ADP of 157.
I have him 16, so I'm pretty much right there with him, but I think his ceiling so high that he will actually exceed those expectations. I mean, certainly Antonio D in the way a little bit right now, but I think he'll play enough to exceed even where I have him, so I like him a lot this year.
Do you see him as actually getting more targets as the season goes on than Gates?
Well, I'm not necessarily. I mean, I think it really depends on Gates, but Gates is 34, and we've seen him with injury troubles in the past. So, if they struggle, which is not what they did last year, if they're going to miss the playoffs, I think that they'll get a full complement of snaps down the stretch. But early on, and certainly the first half of the season, and if they're competitive, he's just going to continue to play in that number 2 role, if you will, a heavily used number 2 role. But Gates is still going to play if he's there.
All right, how about Rob Gronkowski, number 3 tight end going off the boards, number 30 overall. What are your thoughts on his health and his overall ability to play at that level?
Well, I think his ADP is on the rise since we got the clean bill of health. So I do definitely think he'll exceed number 30. Frankly, I think that he's so appealing in round 2 right now that I think he has made Jimmy Graham a poor pick in the first round just because Gronkowski, when he's active, is probably a better fantasy asset than Graham, and you can get him around later. So why take Graham in first, get a great player, and then take Gronkowski in round 2?
That's an interesting way to look at things. Interesting. All right, Jordan Cameron, 6th tight end being taken, number 61 overall. I'm guessing that Hoyer's going to start the season as quarterback, and then we'll see Manziel at some point later on. But what is your feeling on Jordan Cameron?
I think he's about right where he's going right now. I mean, he's going to be heavily targeted in that offense, and he is a pretty good talent. But there's some concerns as well. I mean, last year the damage he did was in a very pass-heavy offense. This year they're going to try and run more. He did it with poor quarterbacking last year, but it's different quarterbacks this year. We don't really know what to expect from Hoyer and eventually Johnny Manziel. And he also led the position routes run last year, which is hard to repeat that at any position. So any drop-off there could be problematic as well. So I think he's right around where he belongs right now.
Okay, let's move on to some of the wide receivers people are asking about. Eric Decker's moved on to New York, 34 at his position, 88 overall. We obviously don't expect what we saw last year, but what do you expect?
Well, I think he's going to slightly exceed that ADP. I have him just inside my top 30. The reason for that is, although I do think the Jets are going to be extremely run-heavy, something they've done pretty much every year. Rex Ryan's been there, and also they're probably not going to be anywhere close to the league-leading touchdowns. They'll probably be near the league basement. That's a concern as well. But I think he's going to see a massive volume of targets, probably upwards of 30% of the team targets. So I think that volume is enough to keep him inside the top 30.
Well, that's interesting. I guess it may be more valuable in a PPR league than a standard, I would guess.
Definitely.
Okay. Emmanuel Sanders has moved on to Denver, 28th at his position, 78 overall. How's he looking?
Well, I have Sanders number 28 as well, so I'm right on his ADP. I think he's right there with Eric Decker in terms of value. Obviously, if Wes Welker goes down, I think that Sanders could really jump up there into maybe even the top 15 option every week. And Welker, has had concussion issues. He's up there in age. It could happen. And that's another reason I like the rookie Latimer in later rounds, just in case. All it takes is one of the top 3 receivers to go down, and Latimer is playing almost every down. So, I think Latimer is probably a better value considering where he's going right now.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to some of the running backs people are asking about, and this one's kind of polarizing. People either love him or they don't really like him at all. Toby Gerhart has a new gig, and he's being taken 20th at his position and 51st overall. What are your thoughts on Gerhart?
I like him. I mean, last year Jacksonville was the number 6 pass-heaviest team in the league, but if you do a little digging, you see that it was a product of game flow. They trailed a lot in the second half. They were actually, if you adjust for game flow, they were the number 20 team, so they were on the run-heavy side of the league, and that's no surprise with defense-minded Gus Bradley there. So I think Jacksonville should just be a little bit better this year, and that'll allow them to run the ball more in the third quarter and maybe even in the fourth. So I think Gerhart, as the clear feature back with very little competition, is going to see upwards of 20 or so touches every game, and I think that makes him a top 15 option in his position.
Now, would you say that his value comes as much as a receiver as a runner, or do you find him more as a runner?
Well, I don't think he's going to be near the league lead in receptions or anything like that, but I think he'll do enough as a receiver to keep him right in that mix. Whereas you have a guy like an Alfred Morris or Stephen Ridley who loses a lot of value because they don't catch balls. I think Gerhart just does just enough that it can keep him in the top 15. I think the value really comes from a high volume of carries.
Okay, all right. Now I want to back up 1 second, go back to the wide receivers. There's somebody I forgot here that I wanted to get in. Keenan Allen, we spoke about Ladarius Green. We'll be playing kind of alongside him. 14th wide receiver being taken in 38th overall. You think he builds on what he did last year?
I like Allen. I mean, he's still pretty young, so he probably still a few things to learn, and he'll have some more competition for targets. You have to remember, Denario and Alexander and Mountain Floyd both got injured last year, which really gave Allen a chance to play every down. So he's going to have a little bit more competition for targets, and San Diego is going to go back to, they really ran the ball a lot in the second half, and it made Allen's fantasy value really dependent on touchdowns down the stretch. So I think he takes a tiny step back. I think he's a decent number 2 option, but where his ADP is probably right around where he finishes.
Now, do you think that Frank Reich coming in there calling the plays, is he going to be running the K gun, or is he? He was Peyton Manning's quarterbacks coach as well. You think what kind of an effect do you think that has on Keenan Allen and the San Diego offense overall?
Well, I think Mike McCoy has a lot to say about that offense. We saw his tendencies from Denver kind of carry over to San Diego. If you look deep at McCoy's history, so I do not think we're going to see any major overhaul in that offense, and that was kind of the early word. And there's some talks about them speeding up the offense a little bit, but I think it's still going to be pretty run heavy, and I don't think Allen's role is going to change very much at all.
Okay, all right. Back to the running backs and back to the Jets. Chris Johnson is now at the Jets, 22nd running back coming off the board and 54th overall. To me, he's someone that I look at as kind of like LaDainian Tomlinson was when he came to the Jets a little bit, more of a pass-catching asset, but I don't know. Do you think he's got the goods to be running as well?
Well, my problem with Johnson, I mean, I don't think he's going to live up to his ADP. I mean, frankly, Chris Ivory, who's just perpetually underrated, I guess, is a better back. I mean, he's a better running back, and he's going to get carries. He's going to steal goal line work, which is going to make Johnson, hard to rely on for touchdowns each and every week. And the guy nobody's talking about is Bilal Powell, who actually played a lot more snaps than Chris Ivory last year. They really liked him, and I think he's going to steal some targets as well, and maybe a handful of carries. So this kind of being everybody's talking about it as maybe a 2-headed monster, but really Johnson's backfield. It could be a 3-headed monster in New York. The good news is they like to run a lot. The bad news is I just don't think Johnson's going to get the volume, or that he's good enough to really sustain top 20 value at the position.
Yeah, it's funny. There just aren't that many more feature backs anymore in the NFL, and I guess he once was, and he's probably going away from that. How about Shane Vereen, and Shane Vereen catching the ball out of the backfield and him running the ball as well? Does he have any prospects for running the ball? He's being taken as the 25th running back and 63rd overall.
Well, I like Vereen a lot. I mean, if you remember last year, right out of the gate, week 1, I mean, he was on a lot of people's breakout list. He came in there and looked like it was going to happen. He was heavily targeted in that game, but he also saw double-digit carries in that first game before he ended up missing the next 8 weeks. So, it's not crazy to think that he could come in and be that guy this year and end up with, 7 targets a game and also maybe 12, 13 carries. If he does that, we're talking about running back 1 numbers. I mean, this could be a major breakout here. So even if he doesn't, I do fully expect Shane Vereen to finish top 3 at the position in targets. And of course, that going with the targets is receptions and receiving yardage for receiving touchdowns. He runs deep routes, so he's going to do a lot as a pass catcher. So Vereen is one of my favorite targets as a number 2 fantasy running back. And even if you go receiver early or grab a tight end, you can get Vereen as your 1 in PPR. And I'd be pretty happy with that.
Good point. Good point. Let's move on to quarterbacks. Matt Ryan, 10th quarterback being taken, 70th overall. It appears he's got his wide receivers back. He lost a tight end, but what are his prospects there?
Yeah, it looks like they're going to go more with the 11 package on offense and use Harry Douglas, target him more to replace Tony Gonzalez, and of course Tololo, who replaces him at tight end, is a massive target that he can use at the goal line. So I think with Julio back in there, Ryan's going to bounce back a bit. I think he is a top 8 quarterback option. And remember, Atlanta, the last couple of years since Dirk Cutter came on as offensive coordinator, has been among the pass heaviest teams in the league. So they're going to be no shortage of throwing the football, especially if Steven Jackson can't stay on the field, because Devonta Freeman, Jaquiz Rogers, both excellent pass-catching running backs.
All right, we've got another kind of a polarizing quarterback, and Cam Newton. People are all over the map on him. He's the 6th quarterback being taken, 57th overall. He's got a tight end, but who's he going to throw the ball to? Cotchery, the rookie? Is the rookie the number 1 guy?
Yeah, I mean, it should be a little concerning when the reports are right now that, if you look at the Panthers' depth chart, Benjamin's not even number 1 yet. They're saying Jericho Cotchery is their number 1 target. They're a wide receiver. That's a concern. I mean, if Benjamin really needs to pick it up during the preseason and take over as their feature number 1 receiver and demand at least a quarter of the targets, throw Olsen in there at about 20, maybe 23% of the targets, just behind Benjamin, and maybe Newton in this run first offense can survive. But yeah, I mean, I have some concerns with him. I think that Panthers offense will take a step back, and each and every year Newton's been in the league, he's been staying up there as a fantasy quarterback, but his receiving numbers his rushing numbers have dropped each and every year. That could happen again this year as he goes into his age 25 season. So I do have concerns about Newton, and there's a lot of other appealing quarterbacks to the point that I'm just avoiding him this year. I do not think he's going to be better than the number 6 fantasy quarterback. Yeah,
it seems to me he's been getting sacked more each year, and I would think that he runs a little less each year he gets older. Forget about the injury, just as he gets older. So it's interesting there to see what they're going to do. My thinking all along was that they were going to get a receiver here towards the end of training camp when some veteran gets cut because of salary cap reasons. Do you see that happening?
Oh, I think they have to. I mean, there's hype in Carolina's camp for Tiquan Underwood, and that should tell you all you need to know about their wide receiver situation. If there's talk he could play every down, you have a serious issue at that position. So, yeah, I think there's always a handful of decent veterans that get cut, and I think one of them will probably land in Carolina.
Yeah, he's just got to make sure he gets the helmet over that hair, and then he's good. All right, final guy, he's going 14th as a quarterback and 103rd overall, and that's Jay Cutler in Chicago. Now, he's got some weapons. He's got a running back. He's got 2 wide receivers for sure. Who is his number 1 wide receiver?
Well, I think it's definitely Brandon Marshall still. I mean, it's his favorite target, and we saw that last year. You split out Josh McCann and Jay Cutler's stats when they played. Marshall definitely was favored by Cutler, but the margin was a little closer when McCann was in there. So Marshall's still in his prime. He's going to be heavily targeted, candidate for 100 receptions, and Jeffrey won't be terribly far behind. I think both of those guys are top 10 fantasy wide receivers. As for Cutler, I mean, this stat has been beaten over the head. I almost shouldn't say it again, but Cutler and McCown, they combined to finish as top 5 fantasy quarterback last year. No reason to think Cutler, if he stays healthy, can be a top 10 option at the position. I do think he'll exceed his ADP, and if I'm waiting a quarterback, he's a guy I love to target in the later rounds.
How many games did he miss last year? 4 or 5?
I think 5, or yeah, I think it was 5 off the top of my head. I'm pulling it up now. Yeah, he missed 5 games.
Okay. Well, all right. Listen, that's Mike Clay from Pro Football Focus. You can find him at Twitter at Mike Clay NFL. Mikey, thank you for the insight.